identified as Rita McDonough, his wife, the victim in this case, Your Honor. She was walking around the house. The officer could see some blood on her clothing. She appeared shaken and upset. Her face appeared bluish in color. Her eyes were watery, and he observed red, fresh blood on her shoulder. Members of the fire department attempted to calm her down and render an assessment of her injuries. While she was being treated, she gave her name, Rita McDonough, as well as her date of birth, Your Honor. A short time later, she was placed in the rear of the ambulance to be transported to South Shore Hospital, where she still remains at this time, Your Honor. While she was being treated by members of the fire department, the defendant was having a conversation with other officers. He walked with the two officers to the cellar area of the house, where he pointed to the area that he claimed he found his wife with a plastic tie around her neck, Your Honor. A short time later, the ambulance transported the victim in her state to the South Shore Hospital. As she was inside the ambulance being treated, Your Honor, officers approached the defendant. He identified himself to the officer, asked him to describe the incident, Your Honor. He said he walked down to the cellar, Your Honor, and found his wife with that plastic band around her neck, basically a zip tie, Your Honor. He said that he attempted to help her and take that off. He said he attempted to bring her up the stairs and drop her, and that's causing injury on her head, Your Honor. He said that she was upset about a past OUI charge which she had had, Your Honor. The officers cleared from the scene at that time, approximately 11:30 a.m., Your Honor. Officers were advised that they were searched with the alleged victim, who was wheeled out of the ER after her CAT scan, Your Honor. He contacted the nurse in charge. He stayed during the brief interview. He asked her to explain what had happened that morning. She said she had an argument with this defendant. She said that during the argument, the defendant walked downstairs to the cellar. He then called for the victim to come down. She went down to the bottom of the stairs. She said he grabbed her in a headlock. She was wrestled to the ground. She said she remembers hitting her head. She also recalls this defendant placing a plastic band around her neck and then pulling on it. This zip tie was pulled tight to a point where she couldn't breathe, Your Honor. The victim said at some point she actually lost consciousness, and at some point the defendant then cut the tie off of her neck, Your Honor. After she told the officer the story, he walked to the treatment room. When he walked out, he was approached by Marshfield. The fire indicated that prior to the arrival of the police, the defendant threatened her. He said, "Tell the police it was a suicide. I am not going to jail." The victim said she was afraid to say anything about the incident in front of her husband while still at the scene, and she immediately began making her statements once she was in the ambulance being transported, Your Honor.